something which all of you do, or most of you are doing continually every day of the week. And you're probably figuring that life's a compromise. There's probably lots of things you're trying to do in your organisation. There's probably all sorts of business issues you're trying to wrestle with, and you know you can't have all of it all the time. And you're probably wondering, what bits do you have, and what bits do you miss out, and what do you go short on in order to achieve some of the objectives that you're trying to meet. And without a shadow of a doubt, one of the biggest issues that you're facing this afternoon is the issue of cost. And even if you are somehow immune from the economic world that I live in, and most of you are living in, I'm sure, unless you've been on a different planet for the last few months or year and a half, you can't fail to notice that these are major and significant issues for every one of us. Now, it isn't necessarily that business is particularly bad. Indeed, as I speak to many of you, and there's a number of customers in the room, then for some of you, business is going remarkably well. And many organisations, even in these troubled times, are doing extremely well. The issue is one of uncertainty. The issue is that you haven't a clue as to just where the economy is going, how your revenue stream is building up or declining. And what you need to do is to be in a position where you're managing your budgets, you're managing your costs, in line with the uncertainty of the revenue streams that are coming in. How is it that you can put yourself in a position where you can respond in a dynamic, in a flexible way that adapts and adjusts to the changing market conditions? And that exactly is the thrust of the point that we're making under this particular heading. So, although times may be good, you need to be in a position where those declining budgets that you're managing are put to good effect. Again, many people are saying too much of the budget is used for keeping the show on the road, keeping the operational activity going. It's reckoned around 70% of IT budgets are devoted to nothing but keeping the show going, keeping the lights on, keeping everything running and operating. And many organisations, many people like you in the room are saying, we'd love to innovate, we'd love to take advantage of all this good stuff you're talking about, but the budget's squeezed. The little I've got to make what I have work and work harder. How is it that I can take advantage of some of this exciting new stuff and benefit in the kind of way in which you're describing? So cost is a critical issue. And one of the things that I want to draw attention to is the issue of power and cooling. Of all the aspects of running the data center, this now is becoming a bigger and bigger issue on your agendas. And if it's not, it should be, because it's making up and comprising an ever-increasing amount of your financial spend. Traditionally, of course, a lot of these issues were separated into the facilities department or whatever. It was separated from IT, not seen under the same heading. And of course, now we realise these costs are significant. These costs are not trivial in any way, and they are becoming an increasing item which is drawing attention to itself. And again, you're forced to manage these escalating costs. How on earth is it all going to happen? I was speaking with a customer last week, and they can see with the squeezed budgets that they're operating with, they can see how they're going to get through year one. He's on a 3-year plan. He said, Simon, I can see how I'm going to get through the first year. I can tweak a bit of this and adjust some of that. We can go with that, make certain compromises. Yes, sure. But year 2, year 3, can't see where it's going. We need to do something radically different if we're going to make it through the next 3 years. And that exactly is the issue I think most people are facing. Return on investment, again, showing my age. I remember the days when you put a 5-year business plan together, people would sign that off and kind of, yeah, exactly, I was seeing a few smiles in the room. So clearly I wasn't alone on that one. But 3-year business plan, well, now it's got to be a year, and some of you are saying 9 months. We'd like to see some sort of return on the investment that we're making. So how on earth is all of that going to happen? What we're going to give in terms of the compromises that you're faced with. And then the conflicting business requirement here is one of agility, because if it's taking longer to sign off spend is going in ever shorter cycles, so you're squeezing the amount you spend, you're spending less, and it's taking longer to sign off. How can you deploy quicker that infrastructure that's necessary for launching new services and new applications? Again, I think it's somebody in the gaming industry saying to me some time back that it takes them 6 months to launch a new game into the marketplace. And the way in which they spoke and the kind of context of their conversation, I kind of got the feeling that was too long, about 5.5 months. It needs to be instant. You need to respond to competitive pressures, and just simply taking the time it's taking to build core infrastructure, core services, is just too long. And yet the decision-making process is being drawn out, and it's getting harder and harder to sign off that spend. How are you going to merge and marry up those two conflicting business pressures? It's all really very, very difficult. And then you're not sure of the demand that you're creating. Many of you are operating in an e-commerce environment. Well, in the days when you kind of ran corner shops, you kind of launched a new service, put on a new shelf of product, you kind of knew who you were drawing on. It was the local community. You kind of work out who it was, your customer base that you're responding to. Today, e-commerce, it's just really very, very hard to know exactly the take-up of new products and services that you're launching. And I guess in City Hall, it's good to stick to sort of government illustrations. We think of the census website, we think of London 2012 and the steps that were taken there to mitigate against excess demand and so on. And crime hotspots database would be another example. These are all examples of unknown demand, unpredictable demand, and everyone has a desire and an interest in order to flex the services that they're consuming, the services they're deploying to support the application infrastructure, not just simply buying more, not just simply putting more infrastructure in terms of memory or I/O or disk capacity into a particular solution, but actually it's putting the right amount to get the right optimum cost point in the way in which you are deploying those services to support the application. The point is that sufficient is good enough. There was a time when throwing resources at stuff was the answer. That just simply isn't going to wash anymore, and good enough is good enough. But what exactly does good enough look like? How do you know what the application that you're deploying requires? What's it going to be like with an unpredictable workload or demand? 12 years ago, I was involved working with a service provider deploying jamjar.com, and that was launched at 8 p.m. in the middle of Coronation Street. I remember it well. No idea the demand was going to be what it was. And in those days, it was much harder to cope with unpredictable or unexpected demand. Now, today, there are many tools available to us. And we've got the advantage, as we shall hear in just a moment, of what we can achieve through granular components built into the underlying infrastructure. So it's the ability to flex those individual components to give you the required performance or capacity to satisfy the requirements of the application and your user base. The point is, as you're about to deploy an application, as you're about to move into a new data center, as you're about to embark upon a consolidation project, what exactly does normal look like? What's normal to you and to your users more particularly? What's their experience of the application? How do they know whether something is performing acceptably, and what is the definition of acceptable? And we find for most organizations, performance becomes an issue only when it's blatantly obvious that performance is woefully astray. And actually, our view is that this is something which needs to be monitored and managed continually. It's a 24/7 process. That's what it is when you're delivering services to customers and to end users. But more particularly, it's understanding what the performance of those applications is for real to those end users. So you're about to embark upon a migration, you're about to embark upon a data center move, and that's one of the things we want to talk to you about this afternoon, is that we can benchmark, we can show you, we can help simulate precisely the workload, the application experience, and that's absolutely key, not just from a migration perspective, but from a service delivery perspective, so that you're enjoying the right levels of performance once the application is live. And then resilience becomes the next major issue that you're battling with. Again, one little word of warning, the first heading. Understand from your service providers what they mean by downtime. There's scheduled downtime and there's unscheduled downtime. And frankly, I've yet to meet a user who could distinguish between unscheduled downtime and scheduled downtime. The system's down, the application isn't working, the website's not there. Frankly, whether the small print says it was unscheduled or scheduled is of no consequence. The fact of the matter is, you should be looking at the overall picture and the overall availability, and you want to understand that you're working with someone who is building an infrastructure, building a service, deploying something that will support your application with the right levels of availability.